Hi, how are you? I hope all's going well. So are you ready to start with the grammar lessons? Great. Now understand that we are not going to deal with the basics of grammar. We'll not even look at the grammar in detail. Then what exactly are we going to do in these lessons? Well, we are going to understand those structures, rather those sentence structures which would be very helpful for us in the IELTS exam, specifically in two modules. Which are these two modules? Listening and reading. No, speaking and writing. In fact, when you will watch the lessons for the writing module, you will notice that I am insisting a lot on using a variety of complex sentences. Same goes for the speaking module also. Now, if we are supposed to use a variety of complex sentences, it is important to first understand what is a complex sentence. And that's what we are going to do in this lesson. Okay? Now, before we understand what is a complex sentence, it is important to know how many types of sentences are there in the English language. Now, there are three types of sentences. Number one, a simple sentence. Number two, a compound sentence. And number three, a complex sentence. Now, let's understand what is a simple sentence and what is a compound sentence so that we can understand what exactly is a complex sentence. Okay, so let's immediately start. In order to understand what exactly is a complex sentence, let's first go to a simple sentence. Okay, now whenever we have only and only one subject and only one verb in a given sentence, we call it a simple sentence. Simple. Look at the examples. See, the girl is my best friend. So there is one subject, the girl, there is one verb, is. That's it. Next example, she is beautiful. Again, one subject, one verb. She is wearing a red dress. Again, this is present continuous tense, right? So the verb is wearing, wherein the main verb is wearing, right? Is a helping verb. I hope this much you already know. In that case, again, we have one subject and one verb. One main verb. Again, we'll call this a simple sentence. Once again, she is standing on the balcony of her house. Again, a present continuous tense. Still, we have only one subject and one main verb, right? So this also is a simple sentence. Her house is in front of my house. Again, there is one subject and one verb. So this sentence is also a simple sentence, right? Now, we can say that a simple sentence is very simple to understand, right? Let's move on to a compound sentence. Now, what is a compound sentence? Whenever we have two or more independent clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction, we get a compound sentence. Alright, now please don't be confused with these terms, clauses, coordinating conjunctions. We'll understand each one of them in detail in this lesson itself. Alright, so let's leave alone clauses, the word clauses for now. Let's talk about coordinating conjunctions. Now, in English we have multiple types of conjunctions. We have coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, correlative conjunctions. Then we also have adverbial conjunctions. I mean, many more. But then the good part is we have only and only 7 coordinating conjunctions. That means whenever we use any of these 7 conjunctions, we get a compound sentence. Now, two or more independent clauses. Let's understand that. In fact, to simplify this, let me say, whenever we have two or more simple sentences connected with a coordinating conjunction, we get a compound sentence. Okay? Now let's say there are two simple sentences and we are connecting these two simple sentences with one coordinating conjunction and we are getting a compound sentence, right? So till now we are calling these two simple sentences as sentences. Now when these two are combined and we get one single sentence, we will now call these two sentences as two different clauses. Okay, let me explain this with the help of an example. Look at this. Here we have an example, two simple sentences. I work as a teacher. One subject, one verb. Then we have another simple sentence. I like doing pottery in my free time. Okay, so two simple sentences. Let's connect them with a coordinating conjunction to get a compound sentence. So this compound sentence would be, I work as a teacher, but I like doing pottery in my free time. So now, because we have used a coordinating conjunction, okay, this is a compound sentence. All right, this much is clear? Good. Now, what are these 7 coordinating conjunctions? They are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Now, if we take the first letter of all these 7 coordinating conjunctions, we get an acronym which is fan boys. Now, that's not really a word, but this is just a way to remember the coordinating conjunctions. The usage? Well, we use for to talk about reason. We use and to talk about anything in addition. Nor is used to say something as not also. But is used to show contrast. We use or to talk about an alternative option. Then yet is also used for showing contrast, right? And so is used to talk about a result. Cool? Now, here we see two different conjunctions, but they both talk about contrast. Which are these two conjunctions? But and yet. Well, there is a difference between the usage, and this is something that we will understand when we are talking about the different types of connectors which show different types of contrast. Okay, so for now, let's just understand and let's just keep in mind that both these conjunctions, but and yet, they talk about contrast. Let's talk about the word nor. This again is a coordinating conjunction, right? But whenever we use the conjunction nor, we always have to use inversion. Now, what is inversion? Again, this is something that we are going to deal a lot in detail in altogether different lesson. But for now, let's just understand it a little. Whenever we construct a sentence, we start it with a subject and then there is a verb, right? Subject, verb. But what happens when we inverse the position? The verb comes before the subject, okay? And that's what is called inversion, in short, all right? So whenever we are using the word nor, we have to use inversion. Remember this, all right? Now, apart from this, there is something more that we need to understand about a compound sentence. Look at this. Over here, we have used a comma, right? There's one clause, right? There's one clause, I work as a teacher. This is one clause. There's another clause, but I like doing pottery in my free time, right? So there are two clauses in one compound sentence. Correct? So what are we doing? We are adding a comma after the first clause. Okay? That means whenever we are connecting two simple sentences with a coordinating conjunction, we have to use a comma after the first clause. Okay? But this also has to do a lot with the subjects of these two clauses. Remember, whenever we have two different subjects, only and only then we can use a comma. So, in the first clause, there's a subject I. In the second clause also we have a subject, which is again I, which is fine. But both these clauses have their own subjects, and only then we should use a comma. If there is only one subject, we will not use a comma. Okay? Look at this. For example, if I have to write a sentence like this, I work as a teacher but like doing pottery in my free time. Now in the second clause, there is no subject. So there would be no comma after the first clause. This much is clear? Cool? Alright, so just let's quickly revise what we have learned so far. We have understood what is a compound sentence. A compound sentence is formed by adding two or more simple sentences using a coordinating conjunction. Now, whenever we get a compound sentence by using two or more simple sentences, these simple sentences are not called sentences anymore. They are now called clauses. Okay? Different clauses in one compound sentence. Same logic would be there for a complex sentence also. We will have different clauses. Okay? Look at it in a while. Another thing that we have understood is in case of a compound sentence, we have to use a comma after the first clause, and this has to be used only when in both the clauses there are subjects. Okay? The subjects can be same, like in this case it's I, right? It can be a different subject also, it's fine, but both the clauses should have their own subjects, and in that case we must use a comma. Cool? By the way, also remember that this comma comes before the coordinating conjunction, not after the coordinating conjunction. Alright? This much is clear? Now, also understand that whenever you are forming a compound sentence, there would be two or more clauses. Now, these clauses would be independent clauses. What is an independent clause? Well, hold on to that thought. Just remember that these clauses are always independent clauses, and they are also called main clauses. So, in a compound sentence, let's say there are two clauses. Both these clauses would be main clauses, or we can also call them independent clauses. Okay? Cool? Now, there is one more way in which we can form a compound sentence. Let's look at it. So, whenever two or more independent clauses, I hope now the idea is clear what is a clause. Whenever two or more independent clauses are connected by using a conjunctive adverb, we get a compound sentence. Again, don't be confused what is a conjunctive adverb. Just hold on, we'll look at the examples and the idea would become clearer. Look at this example. We are saying we need to practice regularly. That's one simple sentence. Next, we will not understand the concepts properly. That's another simple sentence. Okay. Now we have two simple sentences and we want to connect them to form a compound sentence. We can also take help of any conjunctive adverbs. Look at this. we need to practice regularly, otherwise we will not understand the concept properly. Of course, we need to practice. Alright, now what are these conjunctive adverbs? Words like however, otherwise, similarly, nevertheless, moreover, furthermore, besides, certainly, thus, accordingly, therefore, also, next, finally, meanwhile, incidentally, and others. These are all called conjunctive adverbs. In fact, they are also called as adverbial conjunctions. Whatever the name be, doesn't matter. What is important is to know the usage. Look at the usage. Now, what are we doing? We are using a comma after the conjunctive adverb. And before that, we are using a semicolon. Remember this, okay? Now, if we want, we can actually break it in two different sentences. We can say, we need to practice regularly, full stop, and then otherwise, comma, we will not understand the concept properly, right? Here we can break the sentence in two separate sentences. However, we cannot make two separate sentences by using a coordinating conjunction. For example, we cannot say, I work as a teacher, full stop, capital B, but I like doing pottery in my free time. No. Well, in any informal situation, yes, we can start a sentence with a coordinating conjunction. Informal situation means when you're texting your friend, or maybe, you're just writing something to somebody, just in any informal situation. Yeah, I hope you understand that. There we can do that. But in any formal situation, we cannot start a sentence with but or and or any other coordinating conjunction. Okay? So if at all we have to make two separate sentences and still need to keep the sense of a compound sentence, we can use an adverbial conjunction. Okay, so this much is clear? Cool. Now let's look at some examples of a compound sentence to get the idea clearer. So look at this. She was late for the meeting for she missed the bus. Look at this, we are using a comma over here because we have two subjects, one in each clause, she. That's why it is important to use a comma, and a comma is used before the coordinating conjunction. Okay, I wanted to go for a walk and my friend decided to join me. Again, two subjects, that's why we have a comma before the coordinating conjunction. Further, he doesn't like playing football, nor does he enjoy watching it. Look at this, this is the verb and this is the subject. So the order is changed. Verb is coming before subject. This is called inversion. Hold on, we'll understand the concept of inversion altogether in a different lesson. For now, just digest this, okay? That with nor, we always use inversion. Once again, he doesn't like playing football, one subject, nor does he enjoy watching it. Again, another subject. Cool. So, two subjects, one in each clause. Cool. She loves reading novels, comma, but she rarely has time to finish them. Okay. You should have medicine or I'll call your mother. Alternative options, what do you choose? Okay. It was raining heavily, comma, yet the match continued as planned. So, it and the match, two subjects. Cool. I forgot my umbrella, so I got soaked in the rain. Clear? The idea is clear? Now do you understand what is a compound sentence? Clear? Alright, now let me give you a quick shout out. Yep, it's my promo time. So, the lessons that you are watching right now, these are just a small part of my full course called IELTS Ultimate All-in-One Course, and honestly, it's everything you will ever need to prepare for the test. This course covers all 4 modules in full detail. Everything is explained in step-by-step manner from basics to advanced, wherein I also explain you how to do self-evaluations so that you're not dependent on anyone to see your improvement. So basically what happens is, when you join the full course, I will talk to you personally on a Zoom call to help you build a customized study plan based on your requirement. And then I stay in touch with you through WhatsApp or email for daily follow-ups, reminders, and also to clear your doubts whenever you have any. This way, you are never preparing alone. My students always say this one-on-one support and clarity is what helped them to finally hit their target score. Oh, and since you're watching this on YouTube, there's a special discount just for you. Go to the description, click on the course link, and while registering, use coupon code TYOFFER and get a super discount. My website, WhatsApp details, contact details, everything is there in the description. Message me if you have any questions. Alright, back to the lesson now. Now, let's move on to a complex sentence. So, whenever in any sentence we have at least one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses which are connected by using a subordinating conjunction, we get a complex sentence. Alright, once again, I'm sure you will be confused with the terms like subordinating conjunctions. Still we are dealing with independent clause or dependent clause. Hold on, you will understand this concept by the end of this lesson automatically. For now, just understand, whenever in a sentence we have minimum one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses, then such a sentence is called a complex sentence. Okay? Once again, let's understand the concept in a simpler manner. Let's say we have 2 simple sentences. Okay? Now, when these 2 simple sentences are connected by using a subordinating conjunction, we call it a complex sentence. Of course, now the question would be, what are subordinating conjunctions? Okay, do not go by the name. I would advise to understand the usage of these conjunctions. Alright, because unlike coordinating conjunctions, we have many subordinating conjunctions. Okay, so once again, whenever we are connecting, let's say there are 2 simple sentences and we are connecting them with a subordinating conjunction, we get a complex sentence wherein there is minimum one independent clause, which is also known as a main clause, right? And the second clause is automatically a dependent clause. Okay, so look at this. Why is this the case? Because it's a subordinating conjunction. Coordinating conjunction means both having same level. Coordinating conjunction. That's why both the clauses or 2 or more clauses would be all independent clauses. In case of a complex sentence, we are using a subordinating conjunction. That means we are having one main clause and the second clause is dependent. Why? Because the conjunction is subordinating, not coordinating. Okay? Is it getting slightly clearer? Good. So, once again, whenever we are forming a complex sentence, we have to use a subordinating conjunction wherein one clause, minimum one clause would be independent and another clause or clauses would be dependent. Cool? This much is clear? Let's look at an example. So if I have to say, I did not go to school, one simple sentence. Another simple sentence, I am not well. Two simple sentences. Let's connect them with a subordinating conjunction. I did not go to school because I am not well. Right? So what am I using over here? Because, a subordinating conjunction. Now here we have two clauses. I did not go to school, clause number 1, and because I am not well, clause number 2. Together they form one single sentence, which is a complex sentence. Now the question is, what are these subordinating conjunctions? Let's look at them. Again, there are many, right? These are just few. For example, because, in order to, after, if, until, while, although, whereas, whenever, as soon as, before, once, unless, and many other. Let me show you a list actually. So, here are quite a few subordinating conjunctions. So, just have a look at them. Try to read them. You can pause the video, try reading these subordinating conjunctions and understand that there are more subordinating conjunctions. However, if you just learn these many, you will be easily able to write good answers in your IELTS exam. Okay? Now, before we move on to understanding the examples of a complex sentence, let us understand one very important concept about a complex sentence. In fact, over here we are going to compare a compound sentence and a complex sentence. Now, look at this. In case of a complex sentence, again, let's take example of these two clauses. First one is, I did not go to school. Second clause is, because I am not well. Okay. Now, whenever it is a complex sentence, we can reverse the order of the clauses. Look at this. We can say, because I am not well, I did not go to school. Okay. However, whenever you are changing the order, remember that there should be a comma after the clause which starts with a subordinating conjunction. Okay. Once again, just to clear it, if at all you start a sentence with a subordinating conjunction, then you will add a comma after that clause. Okay. Then your main clause can follow. Yes, in this case, the clause which has a subordinating conjunction is a dependent clause, whereas the first one is an independent clause, the main clause. Okay. So what have we understood by looking at this example? That whenever it is a complex sentence, we can change the order of the clauses. But can we do that in a compound sentence? Let's just take any example. Say for example, can I say, but she rarely has time to finish them. She loves reading novels. No. Can I say, for example, or I will call your mother, you should have medicine. No, we can't. So, what I am trying to explain you is, in case of a compound sentence, we do not start the sentence with the clause which has a coordinating conjunction. We'll always start with the clause which is not having the coordinating conjunction, then we'll add a comma and then the clause having coordinating conjunction comes. Okay. However, in case of a complex sentence, we can change the order of the main clause and the dependent clause, which is in this case also known as subordinating clause. Why? Because we are starting the sentence or that clause with a subordinating conjunction. So we can change the order. Whenever we are using a subordinating conjunction in the middle of a sentence, then we do not add comma. But if we start a sentence with a subordinating conjunction, that means if there is a subordinating clause coming first, then we add a comma before we write the main clause. Clear? Sure? Alright, now let's look at some examples of a complex sentence. Okay, so look at this. Although it was raining, comma, we decided to go hiking. We are starting the sentence with the subordinating clause, right? Because there's a subordinating conjunction over here. That's why we will add this comma over here. Alright? Next, if you study hard, you will pass the exam. Once again, we are starting the sentence with a subordinating conjunction. That means this is a subordinating clause. That's why we will use a comma and then the main clause will follow. Now, let's also talk about the word if for a moment. Whenever we are using this word if, we get a conditional sentence. In fact, let me tell you that there are different types of conditional sentences. There's something called zero condition. There's something called first condition, second condition, third condition, and then there is something called mixed condition also. So, in the English language, we have different conditional sentences, and that's why we are going to deal with conditional sentences in altogether a different lesson in detail. Okay, so for now, let's just continue understanding complex sentences. Okay, so when the movie starts, we will be seated in the theater. Once again, a complex sentence. While he waited for his appointment, he read a book. Look at this next sentence. You won't succeed unless you put in more efforts. Now, do you see any comma over here before or after unless? No, because this first main clause, you won't succeed, comes first. The subordinating clause comes after the main clause, unless you put in more efforts. That's why there is no comma. If we write unless you put in more efforts, then there would be a comma. Unless you put in more efforts, comma, you won't succeed. Full stop. Okay, I am sure the idea is clear by now. Next, she needs to finish her project, her report, before she leaves for vacation. Cool. After the team won the game, they celebrated their victory. Once again, if we want, we can change the order of these sentences. For example, we can say, the team celebrated their victory after they won the game. No need of comma in that case. Or, for example, he read a book while he waited for his appointment. Again, no need of comma. Cool? Is the idea getting clearer? Alright, now let's look at some examples and let's try to find out if they are compound sentences or complex sentences. Well, to be honest, nobody is going to ask you this in your exam. Okay, what is a compound sentence or what is a complex sentence? In fact, you will not even be asked to identify which sentence is a compound one and which is a complex one. However, because we have understood the difference so much in detail, let's try doing this exercise by identifying which sentence is a compound sentence and which one is a complex sentence. Probably we'll get to learn something more. Let's see. So, as soon as I finish my food, comma, we will leave. Alright. Now, You see, we are starting this with a subordinating conjunction. So this is clearly a complex sentence, right? Next, I spoke to my friend as soon as I heard the good news. Of course, we are using a same connector over here, but do you see there is no comma before or after? Because now this subordinating conjunction is coming in the middle of the sentence. The main clause comes first. So here we are not using comma, and this also is a complex sentence. Alright, let's move on to the next one. After I finished my gap year, comma, when I entered university. Okay, hold on. This doesn't sound like a sentence. There's something incomplete, right? After I finished my gap year, comma, when I entered university. What? Then what? So there's something missing, right? Now, look at this. After I finished my gap year, comma, when I entered university, comma, I found it difficult to focus. Now, this is a complete sentence, right? Now, once again, understand this. Whenever it is a complex sentence, okay, I hope you understand this is also a complex sentence because we are using subordinating conjunctions. There are two subordinating conjunctions. Now, whenever we have two subordinating conjunctions, we would need three simple sentences. Okay, just like for one subordinating conjunction, we need two simple sentences. Similarly, for two subordinating conjunctions, we will need three simple sentences so that the sentence is complete. Let's say, for example, there are three subordinating conjunctions. We would definitely need four simple sentences to form a nice complex sentence. So, did you learn something new? Cool. Now, just understand this. Whenever there is no main clause, if there are only subordinating clauses, just like in this example, then it is not called a sentence. And what do we call it? We call it a fragment. It's not a sentence, it's just a fragment. When we add the main clause, then this fragment becomes a sentence, which is a complex sentence. Alright, let's move on to the next example. You too should try to focus on your studies just like everyone else is working hard to improve their grades. Once again, a complex sentence. Why? A subordinating conjunction is there, just like. Next example. The dress is not good, comma, so I don't think I'll buy it. So, a coordinating conjunction, and we have two subjects, one in each clause, the dress and I. That's why there would be a comma. Okay, and this is a compound sentence. Okay, all right, next example. It was not easy to finish the project on time, semicolon. However, I managed to complete it. This is also a compound sentence. Cool. Let's move on to the next example. In case you feel tired, let me know. Can I change the order? Let me know in case you feel tired. Yes. What is this in case? It's a subordinating conjunction. And that's why, because we are using this clause in the beginning, that's why there's a comma after the subordinating clause. Okay, so once again, in case you feel tired, let me know. This is a complex sentence. Next example. My grandfather smoked cigarettes, yet he lived for 90 years. A compound sentence. Because we have a coordinating conjunction yet. We have two subjects, my grandfather, he, for both the clauses. That's why we will use a comma. Cool. Next example. Unless you make up your mind, comma, I cannot do anything. A complex sentence, clearly. Next, I do not like pizza, comma, nor do I like ice cream. Okay, easy. A compound sentence. Cool. Next example, even if subordinating clause, right? I mean, this is the beginning of a subordinating clause because this is a subordinating conjunction. Even if you go to the university to complete your studies in the field of science, then what? Even if you go to the university to complete your studies in the field of science, so this is not a complete sentence. This is just a fragment. Okay, I hope now it's clear. Let's look at a complete sentence. Even if you go to the university to complete your studies in the field of science, comma, you will not enjoy your job. Okay, now the sentence is complete. You may enjoy your job, but we need to just complete the sentence. All right, let's go to the next sentence. He completed the marathon, though he was tired. A complex sentence, right? All right, let's just look at one last sentence. She finished her homework early, but she still went to bed late. Now, this is a coordinating conjunction, and both the clauses have subjects. In that case, we have used a comma, and that's why this is a compound sentence. Simple. All right. So I hope now the idea of a complex sentence is clear. In fact, I also hope you now understand what is the difference between a compound sentence and a complex sentence. Remember the usage of comma. It's very important because sometimes in some situations, commas have the power to change the meaning. And this is what we are going to understand in the next lesson, where we will be dealing with the relative clauses. But before that, I want you to revise the notes, revise this lesson, understand the idea of a complex sentence properly. Try to make some complex sentences by using subordinating conjunctions, and then I see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.